And when you change into the observer, you can kind of see this a little differently, the emotion. You begin to notice how it moves through the body, and you begin to get insights. There are other emotions underlying in that emotion. And these are important because they're information. It's a history record of, first of all, how you got there, how you programmed yourself to feel the way that you feel. And also it's a key on how to deprogram yourself from the way that you feel emotionally, okay? But now what we haven't learned in our modern day society, we know that we are all surviving. We have to learn how to thrive. What's the opposite of that surviving? We don't know that. We're not even familiar. Many of us haven't even felt peace in our life, actually. We really, really connect with that. We haven't known real unconditional love. So this process is you're going to teach yourself to embody the opposite of all your survival programs. That is how we cultivate and we refine this organism into a higher operating system.
My name is Lee Chandler, and I'd like to welcome you to The Wise Old Soul. Now remember, each and every one of us has within us that wise old soul. And I'm so excited to have people on this podcast that are some of the wisest souls I've ever met. Today's guest, I can't tell you, I am so excited about having her on with us. The list of things that she's accomplished in such a young life is just amazing. Neurolinguistic programming, epigenetic physiotherapist, a YouTuber, she's a contactee, she's experienced NDEs, near-death experiences, a clinical therapist. I can go on and on and on, but at this stage, I would like to introduce Geraldine Orozco. Geraldine, welcome to the Wise Old Soul.
Hello, Lee. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to take a few minutes and talk with us. And Geraldine, your experiences, at such a young age, your knowledge, your understanding, the only way I can sum it up is I feel like I have the Encyclopedia Britannica in front of me on spirituality, and it's you. And in a very short period of time, we're going to try to condense some of that and share that with some of the people that have joined us. So if you're okay, I'm just going to kind of start off. And it's my understanding, Geraldine, that really your awakening took place at a really young age, but it was when your partner unfortunately passed. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, I would say it was progressively, but I think at that time when my partner passed away, it was at the point where I just had started my own business. My family was going through major transitions. So it was just like one of those probably cosmic moments that catapulted major awakening for me to question reality, to question love, relationships, and essentially the purpose of our life. I think that really led me into deep questions that I was not able to find outside, even though, I had read many books at that point. I've gone to many seminars, and I just wasn't finding the answers to my questions. And I think that's where I began my journey into a deep practice of meditation. I had been meditating very early since a young age. My family is very spiritual, but when you're driven by these life events into these deeper inquiries, there's a certain, I guess, propulsion behind that really leads you into clarifying your question and clarifying your intention behind these things. And I think that's really important for spiritual awakening, that our pursuit goes beyond just the ego or maybe just a temporary experience that happens to us, like the trauma of that moment. But rather, it was a pursuit of truth, really, that it pushed me into. And I see that's something that's super important for us at this time, because if we don't have something beyond that, this journey, it's not for the weak of heart. It's for a courageous person that is ready to challenge all belief systems, all programs that were instilled into, and kind of dismantle slowly, lovingly, compassionately, those belief systems in the pursuit of truth or love. So yes, this is how it began for me.
Incredible. Thank you for sharing that. So if we go to 2013, you had a vivid abduction. You were a contactee, which when you start with meditation and all of a sudden we jump to this conversation of being a contactee, this really started to awaken you as well. It activated the spiritual portion of who you are. How did that really start up then for you? What was it that triggered that experience and that wanting to grow? Because you really have to want to experience more than what we're currently experiencing, right?
That's right. And the interesting thing about this is that when you see, I had taken 4 months out of my career. I had a high-end event planning company at the same time of having my meditation school. It's a corporate meditation programs. But I had taken 4 months out of both of them to go into retreat, into meditation, because in 2013, I had reached another level of these questions. And I think what happened is that I learned for myself, I guided myself through a kind of, again, dismantling of my own programming, but on a deeper level. These were my identity as a woman, my identity as all the roles that, I believed I was supposed to take on. Societal, religious, cultural. And so this began to deconstruct my ideas about reality and the role that we play as humans in general. And what I discovered is that when I followed my emotions around these programs, I was taken all the way back to the roots of my ancestors, down my family lineage, my mother's lineage, down my great grandmother. And I began to discover a lot of things about my family that, we had never spoken about in regards to profound traumas, profound belief systems. And they were shocking to me to discover these things, but they really led so much clarity in understanding why my beliefs were the way that they were. And essentially, as I followed those emotions back even deeper, all the way back to my ancestral lineage, I began to uncover these patterns that these belief systems are actually quite supported by society, supported by religion. I mean, there's so many different elements that support a lot of these belief systems, and there are very profound, expansive reasons for that. And really, you're waking up consciousness to understanding the level of unconsciousness in which we exist as a human race in relation to our environment. We are deeply molded. We are socially engineered. We are told how to be, how to feel, how to become. And that is a really huge layer of identities, perhaps false identities that we kind of take on. So when I began to uncover that, going all the way back, it took me really back to the origin, through humanity, following my own ancestral lineage, to the origin of man, and to trying to question, well, who is imposing these belief systems? Why is there these kinds of plays on polarity and pools of this energy within humanity? And in 2013, in October, this is where I began to have this experience for the first time. And mind you, for the past probably 10 years before that, I didn't watch films. I didn't go out because I was extremely into my business, to the point where I had kind of just cut myself off from the world, from the external world, in just focusing on my work and my spiritual development. So there was a kind of a very pure connection, a very clear connection to my understanding of these things. And it is required to get clarity on when these experiences do happen, because we can very easily be influenced by the things that we watch in media when it comes to talking about interdimensional beings. So, I never watched these sci-fi films. As a child, I wasn't terribly fascinated by that during that time. So the reason why I say that is because when I had that experience, it completely shocked me, because I didn't know, I didn't even think that these beings were something that existed beyond our understanding of humanity. But it was in this experience that it opened my eyes to understand that, we are very much interdimensional beings, and that our power of sovereignty lies beyond this dimensional range. We extend beyond this dimension. So all of the constructs that we're so tightly holding on to or trying to figure out how to navigate really fall apart pretty quickly. When you begin to understand how cosmically interconnected we are. And also, the level of intelligence and perspective that these beings bring to us is universal. It's so expanded in the way that they expand your ability to see things as universes. That's how they communicate, that's how they talk. Taking your mind away from a very, very individual, myopic view that we tend to take through our own personal experiences. It really snaps you out of suffering. It snaps you out of a victim role and really, makes you question, well, what is my role? So that's how it happened for me. It was a paradigm shifting moment for me to understand that there was something beyond that, and that potentially our human race was very much seeded by this kind of intelligence, and we each hold within us a connection to these interdimensional aspects of ourselves.
Sure. And that's where we get into DNA. Yeah. I know that it's been discussed that, our DNA, really, when it comes to the physical, we utilize maybe 3% of that DNA. 97% of it is spiritual. It's interdimensional. And I know you've done a lot of research and experienced a lot of that along with the hybridization of the human race. And you yourself have experienced and understood that this hybridization takes place on a regular basis. Like it's ongoing. Can you maybe talk a little bit, Geraldine, about the DNA, the hybridization that you believe and have experienced up to this point?
Yes. Let me try to explain what that is. Ultimately, we are talking about the survival and the regenerational aspect of this matrix, what we call this holographic construct in which we exist and we interact with one another. And the relationship between the human and the aspect of the soul, which is inhabiting this physical vessel, is actually deeply interconnected to many other dimensions. In fact, we as a soul are a fractal of infinite potential that then exists in many dimensions simultaneously. So we are one of those fractals, okay? And so what we are doing, how we are contributing to the expansive and contractive as elements of this multidimensional system, this organism, I see it very much as an organic living consciousness that we are participating in. We are sustaining that regeneration element of this organism. And the hybridization program, from our perspective of the third dimension, third dimension are very physical, right? We are here to experience this duality in order to merge feminine, masculine, and to learn how to create life. We are able to bring another living soul into this realm, but we are also creating through the words that we speak, our intentions, our vibrational frequency, our energy. So we are absolutely fundamentally creative beings. And that's incredibly important to understand. But what we don't understand is the effect of that creation. What do we create? What are we affecting when we create? In fact, every single move that we make creates a ripple effect in this organism. And so whether we're conscious about it or not, so remember that when you enter into this third dimensional realm, we're very much unconscious. We forget actually, as a result of the programming that we incur from the womb until the age of 7, we experience that individuation from the whole, from the source first, and then from the mother. And that is quite a traumatic experience, which causes a lot of memory loss about what you are as a whole before you incarnate, right? And so, but that is necessary for the human in order to experience the ability to reunite itself back with the source again at the time of death. However, what we're doing, our life is split in two aspects: our physical waking state and experiences that we do here in the waking life, and also what we do in dream state. Most of the experiences that we have are actually taking place in dream state, but very little is talked about that. All the ancient cultures spent a lot of time discussing dream state, the practice of lucidity. In fact, a lot of their architecture was built around creating supplementary, architecture to help enhance the coming in and out of the physical body in that training while being absolutely lucid. Okay, so that lucidity that we're now learning how to train is important in two places: in your waking state, being absolutely conscious in the present moment, but also in your dream state. And it is in the dream state that these experiences take place. But we feel them in the physical body, because the more conscious you become about them and about your multidimensionality, these dimensions begin to merge and we begin to feel them. Okay, so for the hybridization program is about bringing a soul, okay, as a splicing of your own soul, into this organism. And we are doing it both in the physical through the children that we bring, and we also do it interdimensional through hybrids. They are intelligently designed, you can say genetically modified, but when I say genetically modified, the intention, the real core, the big picture intention behind that is a very powerful self-organizing system, which we see in nature. Okay, so we participate in a very powerful self-organizing system. And nature, if you observe nature, everything in nature follows these natural laws of the universe, these orders of the universe of life and death, of cycles. And all of those are kind of self-organized within ranges of frequency between the cycle of life and death. And that range of frequency, ranges of experiences that happen between life and death can be seen as archetypal steps that we all have to cycle through as humans in this lifetime. And we also experience them in a micro matter subconsciously in these dream states, in our dream experiences. So the hybridization program, in other words, when we have these experiences, the woman or the man will have dream-like states in which we are interacting with higher intelligence fractals of our own self. So alien or interdimensional, I don't use the word alien, I use the word interdimensional because I believe it's more accurate. These interdimensional beings, which are, you can say, our galactic family. Why? Because genetically we are them and they are us. They are in our DNA. Now, how I kind of came across this information is by the research that I do in my work with contactees and also in my own personal experiences, that we seem to cycle through in our family lineage contact. So in my experience, my entire family has had contact experiences. And lo and behold, when we go into hypnotherapy and each individual did their own study, we discover that we somehow have connections with similar species that are pretty prevalent in our bloodline. And when I began to look and interview other experiencers, I'm discovering the same thing. So this leads to the question and also the kind of experiences. Okay, so let's narrow down. What is the hybridization program? The hybridization program begins with an experience of insemination. Okay, there's an experience of gestation. There's an experience of extraction, and then there's a presentation. Okay, so women or men have dreams around either one of these, and they will wake up consciousness in either one of those, and it'll play a role in the moment that they wake up conscious about their participation in these sections of the hybridization program, play a role in what they're meant to do, what they're meant to remember of the hybridization program. Okay, most people that you usually will start with one of those memories. They will either remember the presentation, or they will remember the insemination, or they remember the extraction. These can be dreams where they are on a clinical environment and the elements being taken out of the body, and they have these dreams, very powerful, sometimes extremely traumatizing, which actually can result in PTSD. And even sexual issues. A lot of sexual trauma is something that emerges from these kinds of experiences. So it's very important for the women. They literally have biophysical side effects where they sometimes have problems with their menstruation or their, the womb. The womb becomes affected. Now, another thing that's very interesting about this is that the kind of trauma that the human incurs, it's not random, right? What I discover is that actually, let's say the female has a womb trauma after these experiences. When you look back at her history, there's womb trauma down the entire ancestral lineage. So the same manifestation, the same way that we remember and we experience trauma in waking state, let's say we're incapable of having a child in this lifetime, there is a cause and effect intergenerationally where all of our ancestors had made choices that led us as an organism to manifest the result of those programs in the physical. And this also is actually, it's happening interdimensionally in the hybridization program. Okay, so sometimes women that can't have children here end up having lots of experiences of interdimensional contact. And a psychologist and a gynecologist might say that that's very much a chemical imbalance type of thing. It's very much psychological yearning, of creation. But when you really look at the somatic roots behind that and the history behind the trauma of bringing life into this world, there's a much deeper reason. There's a lesson. There's an evolution that is occurring for this entire ancestral lineage. And it becomes expressed in these interdimensional realms through the hybridization program, which is very interesting. Because the self-organizing element is that the hybrids that are being created are super advanced beings. They are very highly advanced beings. The kind of species that are being pooled, each one of those species can kind of be related to some kind of archetypal range of consciousness, you can say. Okay, so if you understand this intuitively, because every species isn't just one way. There are some parts in the contact community that say, oh, reptilians are negative or bad, or draconians are very negative, and Arcturians or Pleiadians are very positive. But that's not entirely true. What I notice in my own encounters and the encounters with my clients is that they're very much like humans. We are very we have everything. In our own DNA, we have all kinds of races in our own DNA. So in that same way, these interdimensionals are holding different kinds of information. So the purpose of the DNA of this hybridization program is, again, to sustain. In some ways, we can heal lineages through these children that are being created. And in some ways, we create destruction for some elements of our lineage as well. But everything is dependent on the human. Okay, the human has to wake up consciousness in order to understand their role in the participation in the hybridization program, because the human that becomes conscious can actually affect those hybrids, because our DNA is in them, just like we can feel our children when they're afraid. In that same way, we are deeply interconnected. So now this becomes an extension of our soul evolutionary potential. And what I have learned is that we need to learn how to alchemize these old programs that limit and burden and suppress our ancestral lineage as part of our contribution to the collective, to the human race. Right now, more people are becoming interdimensional. More people are waking up consciousness. More people are remembering their dreams and the contact. And that means that as a human race, we have to activate our multidimensionality and our awareness of that, and how to navigate these experiences, not from a place of fear, which is very difficult in many cases, but to try to come into a clear understanding that this is a part of you that we need to work through, we need to evolve through, and understand where we can access free will. Because the human really only has free will when they know, that they have free will, and when they begin to apply their consciousness in the present. So I'll stop right there and see what questions.
It's absolutely fascinating to me, as a lay person that doesn't get into this as you have. As I listen to you, I'm breaking it down as simple as I possibly can, Geraldine, and that is, it's a word that I use a lot of, especially on this podcast. It's the word trust. And it's when we learn to trust that subconscious feeling, that sense of knowing, that will then grow into a more conscious understanding. Fair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's this little bit of trust that we need to build up in ourselves. And through programming and through the way we have been brought up over the centuries, the millennia, that we have not allowed that to take place. We're programmed not to let that understanding, that sense of knowing, come out in us. And hence, I think a lot of people in my generation, growing up in the 60s and maybe the 70s, are experiencing these dreams. They're experiencing a sense of knowing again, and they're confused. And not understanding, how can I release that? How can I let that become part of who I am? Because I've got this understanding or this dogma that was literally forced upon me as a young person. And so the question I have then for you is, you obviously work with many clients, and how do you allow the clients, your people that you've worked with, understand or start to believe and allow them to awaken to this beauty that they have, that they're really a very, very important part of the universes?
Yeah. Before, maybe 10, 12 years ago, it felt harder to do this kind of work, because it felt very sluggish and very difficult, because we're still breaking away from all of these heavy programs of the past. But I feel over the past 3-4 years, it's accelerated tremendously. And as a collective, vibrational frequency individuals are, because the veil is thinning. What does that mean? That we are becoming more aware of our interdimensionality, and we are seeing it in our everyday life experience. Okay, we manifest quicker. We become aware of our programs quicker, because it's being reflected to us. It's being mirrored to us through the world. The world is also going through an awakening as a collective. We begin to see the wars, and we have so many people questioning, and they're it's like we're going through this convoluted, waking up to understand what is true, what is not true, this deep discernment that humanity is kind of coming into after, the pandemic and everything. It really shook up people out of their dream state into questioning things in a very powerful way. And I think that has led to allow people to know that they can question things, because I think before that we were in a deep dream state where we didn't even know what we can question, or if we were allowed to. So I think one of the important things is to know, first of all, that you are allowed to have these profound questions, and to have the courage to go into those questions. And then second, my invitation is to get very familiar with the laws of the universe. Okay, because as quick as you can, because in my mind, the laws of the universe are undisputable truths, you can say, that kind of are underlying all of these kinds of experiences that we have individually and also in these dream states. Because there are certain laws to exchanges and to experiences. There's a cause and effect to things. And if you understand that, then you understand where you need to be. And it's simply we can understand the laws of the universe by connecting more with nature, with aligning with nature and those natural cycles, as I was mentioning, natural cycles of life and death. What does that mean? Your awareness around detachment and attachment to your programs, attachment to your identities. Who do you think who you think you are, who you think you're not. Those are the questions that have to be had, early on, because what you'll discover is that at the core, the one that's questioning, that 0 point, that neutral observer, is going to be the one that we need to cultivate in these next coming years as we grow into this multidimensional awareness, essentially. Because in order for you to experience these kind of strange phenomena and experiences, we need to create a very strong spiritual internal foundation. And that was one thing that I was very lucky in a way to have been able to cultivate before I came into this, ET contact conversation experiences myself, because I had been training to come into a neutral observation and practice my intuition. Extremely important to act to as you mentioned, trust. You are training your discernment. And so the training of discernment is one of the most difficult things for human right now, because we're so distracted and distorted. We are vibrational frequencies. We are bioelectrical, biochemical organisms. And so everything is affecting us. The patterns of the TV, the patterns of sound, of music, everything, when you are unconscious, will shift you emotionally. It'll shift your desires, your wants in a minute without you understanding why. So that level of unconsciousness has to be mastered to a place where we connect with ourselves to the point where we are understanding what is emerging, why it's emerging, and to understand if the information that is needed to receive from that, and then let go of whatever needs to be discarded to continue to come back to that 0 point every time. And I think that that's one of the most powerful tools that I learned on this journey, because, some of the things that I've experienced and seen have been, could be overwhelming for the regular human, and if it wasn't for that understanding, I wouldn't understand that. So another part of it is to understand what does it mean to be protected. Okay, so a lot of people that have these contact experiences always say, I want to be protected. I don't want to have anything to do with those reptilians or draconians or any weird, beings of any kind. But what we have to understand is that actually in our own genetic code, in our own biology, we have the reptilian brain. We have the parts of our brain that have gone through evolutionary process, which show us the evolutionary process that we have come from these beings. We are these beings. They are in our DNA. And if you have these experiences, it's because it's being expressed, So if you have a lot of experiences with Draco-reptilian beings, for example, which are said to be more lower vibrational frequency, we are looking at parts of us that greatly exist in our realm. In fact, most of our root, sacral, solar chakras are processing those frequencies and the informations, and they influence the kind of experiences that you have in dream state. You basically are in resonance with those experiences. And I've experienced that firsthand myself. So the cultivation of your ability to, first of all, control your emotions, feel your emotions fully, know how to process emotions fully, get the information, regulate your nervous system, in order to have a very powerful intuition that is not moved or tainted by imbalanced emotions. That's extremely important for this journey. And from there, that intuition is your tool that we are balancing right now collectively, the feminine and masculine. For a long time, the feminine being suppressed. But what is the feminine? The divine feminine represents your intuition. It represents all of the occult, all of the subconscious, the deep subconscious. So now, as we're going into period 9, as we're going into the age of Aquarius, this year marks the beginning of a major transition frequency change for the world and for every human. And so we're going to be moving quickly into these transitions where the multidimensionality is available to us more than ever. And so the more that we pull ourselves out of this myopic perception that you're just a human, just in this body, just in these everyday experiences, the quicker and the more gentle the transition will be into an understanding that the same laws apply in the interdimensional realm. So laws of frequency. Okay, so you attract who's in resonance with you, whether it's negative people, happy people, same thing interdimensionally. Okay, so the same laws of exchange, okay, the same laws of creation. Your intention plays a major role. And again, your intuition as this being of discernment is the key to navigating these experiences. So these are the kind of tools that I really try to train. This is what I train on my YouTube channel and what I train in my sessions with my clients. And it's super important right now.
So, Geraldine, and this may sound like I'm going backwards or going to oversimplify, but you spoke of meditation.
Yeah.
And that is a wonderful place for many people to probably start to get balanced again of who they are, or to get back to the soul, as many people, and we've all heard, we're spirit having a human experience. And the meditation that you've done obviously has allowed you to move forward in many, many different ways, but you also recognize the fact that you're doing it at a corporate level as well, where it's really affecting a huge number of people to cohesively work together and almost allow the ego to be checked out for a little bit, where they're able to work together within the human realms, but also you're really cracking them open for some serious spiritual growth.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, meditation is the only thing that you cannot get away from. It's actually the only way to enter into these realms, because some people, they want to try to try other things, to try to get to these realms. But the fact of the matter is that if you don't sit down with yourself and cultivate stillness, you see, there's an entire biological side effect to meditation. Okay, when you sit in meditation, in stillness, even just Vipassana meditation, you are growing gray matter in your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You are growing gray matter down your entire spine the longer you learn how to meditate. And that makes you an organism where you become a conduit, which means that you can embody larger, higher vibrational frequencies and process them through your body. That's whole interdimensional realm. See, we're talking about frequencies. If your body is not able to move through these different ranges of frequencies emotionally, those are the emotions. Emotions are bioelectrical charges. Okay, so if we exist in a certain range of emotion based on our belief systems, trapped in our belief systems, we have a cap to our ability to go beyond that vibrationally. You won't be able to see these beings or interact with these beings or understand what you're seeing. That's why for a lot of people that are very disconnected from themselves and their emotions, their dreams are convoluted. They're unclear. They don't make a lot of sense to them. It's very obscure information. But the more you wake up consciousness, more your dreams become communication for you. Very clear communication. And that's kind of what shamans talked about, for centuries, is that the mastery of your own cultivation of your mind is your ability to have clarity in your waking state and in your dream state. So we are kind of refining. It's a refining process of this human instrument, the physical body. So you grow gray matter in your brain. You grow gray matter down your spine. You also begin to shift the bioelectrical structure. We have a certain architecture to our body. Okay, our body actually functions like a toroidal field, and we have infinite number of toroidal fields with core energy centers that run through our entire body. We know them as the chakra system. This is something that also, unfortunately, has kind of become very popular, but not very many people understand how important that is, because our entire system of projection and creation of our experiences is in those energy centers. They are deeply interconnected with our endocrine system. And the endocrine system is responsible for creating chemicals in the body that will shift the responses that we have with our environment. They also will eventually write the DNA and input the important information from your everyday experiences into the history of your ancestral lineage, which is why we have ancestral trauma passing down generations. And we essentially exist within the boundaries of everything we've known and our ancestors have known. And then, we're gently, barely breaking away from these patterns. See, the true potential that a human has to experience is outside of those boundaries. The trauma, if we keep cycling in trauma over and over again, there is no growth. And essentially, we live our entire life becoming a slave to these repetitive programs. And our entire thinking and why this is a problem is because we suffer. Okay, so the idea is that suffering is not normal. It's become kind of a normal thing, like, because the way that this system is set up, we are kind of pushed into the idea of being completely in survival all the time. But that's not the truth. The truth is that we are creative beings, and it requires us to quickly cut the fat in the areas of the things that distract you away from your ability to come into creation. So our entire body, when we come into meditation, when we begin to organize these energy centers, they begin to flow. Okay, and we have a certain order to the way that these energies move through our body. When a chakra is stagnant, let's say we have a very severe trauma in the body, the chakras contract. They become stagnant, very sluggish. They don't move. And a lot of you can experience that by feeling pains or aches or even illnesses develop at a certain time. So the whole purpose of all of these masteries are to have a long life, to have vitality, to have discernment, clarity in your discernment, clear intuition and trust in yourself, and health, right? So we are addressing every single part of the human expression into its highest optimum state. That's the whole point of this work. It's not so much, the end point is not to have the lucid dreams or to have the interdimensional contact. The end point or the ongoing evolutionary existence is to bring your organism into its highest optimum state. And so that, because here's the thing, when we sleep, we leave the body in dream state, okay, and we begin to navigate interdimensionally. The more you remember, the more you recover your memory by the time you wake up the next morning, the more conscious you're becoming, because that recovery of memory is actually a great way to understand where you are in your ascension process. The more you remember who you are and what you're doing at all times, the more aware you are in that present moment. Okay, so, but that requires creating a strong foundation vibrationally for you to be able to sustain all of those things, because what limits the human is their judgment. We apply unnecessary meanings, or we apply our own meanings, which unfortunately are very limited based on our perception, and so it limits our growth, and it even limits our ability to experience what we're doing and what we're seeing there. So we have to be able to gently cultivate this body into a state of observation, non-judgmental observation of all the things. In fact, maybe revert to more of a receiving, understand these experiences as we are receiving them, so that we can translate the important information from there from a calm, grounded way. When we die, we are also experiencing the exact micro deaths that we have every night where we leave our body, okay, at death. Now there's a physics to this, okay? The faster you're spinning, which means the higher vibration that you can hold in your body, the more you have the ability of directing with your intention where you're going to be going, okay? And that applies even at death. So now we're talking about, wow, you actually have some level of mastery over your navigation. And in a way, we have already lived this life. It kind of have we have already created, we already lived this life. And this is why people experience deja vus sometimes. Okay.
Mhm,
The more
mhm.
conscious you become, the more you tune into synchronicities, and the more you tune into some of these magical experiences that they seem to be magical, but actually you're just remembering yourself. You've already existed in this construct, but you're living in it in a conscious matter in which you can choose timelines also from that place.
You make it so simple, you know. It's your progression as we discuss this. It's the building blocks are so basic, one after another. And, we have these experiences when we allow that non-judgment to come out. And I remember as a young man, I remember saying, and I have no idea where it came from. I said, for whatever reason, I'm here on this planet to learn non-judgmental, to be non-judgmental to everything, not just people, but everything,
Yeah.
which people look at you and again, because of where we were brought up and when we were brought up, it's like, well, we all judge. That's just who we are, and we have these ideas, and so we get prepackaged, and we're not allowed to really expand that prepackagedness that we're born with. It gets snuffed out of us, if that's making any sense to you. Um,
Yeah.
and so what I'm hearing is for the average person, without getting into a lot of detail, meditation is a place that you can go. And when you allow yourself to be non-judgmental and allow whatever is meant to be heard, seen, come into you, you allow it to come in, you can digest it a little bit and really make no judgment. You can just release it, let it go. It allows the subconscious then to open up, and maybe you get rid of some of that repetitive thought pattern that you have, which then allows spiritual growth. Fair?
Yes, yes. And I will also say that as people get confused with the concept of letting go emotions, because it seems like all we have to do is just let it go. And that's not really what's actually happening. We have to learn how to feel our emotions completely, which means that part of us is going to go through the sensation body of feeling the emotion, the contraction in the belly, the tightness, if it's anger, like overwhelming anger, the overwhelm of those emotions. But once you feel that body, you shift into an observer. And when you change into the observer, you can kind of see this a little differently, the emotion. You begin to notice how it moves through the body, and you begin to get insights. There are other emotions underlying in that emotion. And these are important because they're information. It's a history record of, first of all, how you got there, how you programmed yourself to feel the way that you feel. And also, it's a key on how to deprogram yourself from the way that you feel emotionally. Okay. But now, what we haven't learned in our modern day society, we know that we are all surviving. We have to learn how to thrive. What's the opposite of that surviving? Few of us, we don't know that. We're not even familiar. Many of us haven't even felt peace in our life, actually. We really, really connect with that. We haven't known real unconditional love. So, this process is you're going to teach yourself to embody the opposite of all your survival programs. That is how we cultivate and we refine this organism into a higher operating system. Okay, so literally, get familiar with what does it feel like to feel peace, not from something you saw in a film or from family members. You yourself, what does peace mean to you? And then you begin to build yourself from the ground up. So I will just add that, just for clarity.
Terrific. Thank you. I very much appreciate that. Each cell of our bodies, right, really is a place of co-creation then. The DNA that is there allows for healing and empowerment in. Every single cell, the billions that we have in the body, have the same capacity then. And when those align, to me, that's the ultimate magic then.
Yes. What do you mean by alignment?
Where
You
where
can
we
see.
have each cell
Yeah.
trust cell next to it. It's the same belief, the same system. It's just a symbiotic relationship where everything is together. There's no, I don't want to use the word negativity, but there's no what's the right word? There's
There's no
it's just
conflict,
no
perhaps.
conflict. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Very good word, simple word. Um, and so that magic really starts to happen when that alignment happens, or the no conflict.
Correct. Yeah. And what you're talking about is exactly what we should head towards, which is the harmony, right? How do we go back to that self-organized harmony in which our entire system is no longer in a war with itself or
Mhm.
with our environment or resistance with our own life experiences? Because we actually become our abusers towards ourselves. When you begin to do in my deprogramming sessions, we take a trauma, we go back and we begin to understand what's happening. But guess what we discover at the end of that? We have become the abusive father towards ourselves. We have become the abusive mother. And these are very profound, shocking realizations for a lot of people because it's what they hate and what they don't want to be, that they reject. And in their entire life is built around making sure that they're as far away as they can from meeting another mother or another father in that way until they discover that they have become that. And it happens in a very, very subconscious manner in which the subtlety of our personalities, which our personality is a construct, it's a defense mechanism. Okay, this defense mechanism of our personality now becomes, it gently plays out these little roles in the way that we choose our partners, in the way that we choose, the words that we speak, the everything, the careers even. Okay, so it's a very rude awakening when humans begin to realize, whoa, how did I end up here? I'm 45 and I'm not in the marriage I want. I don't have the career, nothing is working. What's happening? Well, we have a series of events and experiences and choices that we made that were not really the core true self. We didn't take time to find the core true self. So this is the wars that I mean, the conflicts that you're talking about. Those are all examples of how those conflicts manifest into the body. And of course, the organism, the cells of the body come in conflict with themselves. What happens? People develop cancer. People develop long-term illnesses, even a flu. Even a flu is a reflection of your inharmony within your body in some way. Okay, so the more connected we are to our body, and this is what's happened over the past centuries, that we're healing from the suppression of the divine feminine, is that we have severed the connection between the intuitive self and the human body. Okay, we have three main energy centers: the lower, middle, and upper dantian. And so the lower centers are what master the physical, all the sex, the feeling safe in your body, in your ability to feel empowered, your interrelationships, your emotions. Okay, your heart is actually the largest magnetic field in your body. It represents your love, your worthiness. But this is also the center of coherence, which interconnects you to all the organisms, as you mentioned. This is the key. It's through the heart. Okay, the throat and the third eye are our intuitive centers. Through our voice, we create energy frequencies, we create universes, even with the words that we speak. Through our mind and through our intuition, it's the navigation system of your life. And so we've been cut in half. All of our attention is down here. Are we having all of the things that stimulate the sensation body, the food that we're eating? Does it taste good? Does it feel good? But when we shift from that, okay, into a higher way of observing, the body doesn't desire as much anymore. Okay, we have no desire. You also no longer seek outside of you to be fed your emotional sustenance. love, approval, acceptance, understanding of yourself, safety, you no longer look outside for yourself. And that's actually one of the most powerful protections for the human, to not look outside of them, but to actually become a self-generator of these things within you. You are your own provider. That shift in perspective cultivates a very powerful energetic field. Okay, because you are forging within you, you are reconnecting neural pathways. You see, our bodies, we actually are interconnected through the morphogenetic field. The morphogenetic field is the rest of the DNA that we talked about. That, you know, our body creates organically. The 3% builds this body, you know, the protein for this body. But the rest of that is a series of codes, instructions, information that emerges from the morphogenetic field that brings your body into this physical manifestation. So within that realm, the morphogenetic field is actually where we are interconnecting. And our main way to connect with that is through the heart center. So this information has been suppressed for a long time, is the use of alchemy, the transmutation process of shifting that direction from the external to the internal is actually the key to reconnecting into a state of harmony. And the levels that we are connecting on, I mean, we're talking about self-organizing crystals in your pineal gland. You know, we're talking about creating symmetry in the writing of your DNA. When a person is deeply traumatized, even the DNA coils and it doesn't express itself all the way, which is why we end up with diseases and illnesses and, you know, problems that go down the ancestral lineage. Okay, when you begin to harmonize the body, now DNA begins to express itself in its full expression. You have a wonderful immune system. You are interconnected to the whole. And geometrically, we develop something called the Merkaba in the body, okay, which is the vortex systems of our body that create the toroidal field come into harmonious fluid flow, where you can actually anchor source through the body, which enriches the organs to work at their optimum state, which allows you to begin to leave your body in dream state and to remember. You are recovering memory, and that activates DNA. And vice versa. You know, you recover your memory, you're activating DNA. Okay, so the body comes into an optimum functional state, essentially.
I absolutely get enthralled listening to you. I so appreciate what you're saying. Thank you so much. I'm just going to shift just a little bit, because from a simplistic standpoint, I'm going to leave this part behind just for a moment, and that is people in general, if they took time for themselves, meditated and sit quietly. Very simple to do. Whether it's a minute a day, to let it grow to 5 minutes a day, to 60 minutes a day. I know from a personal experience, I too have been meditating for a long time and had the benefit of going to Thailand and spending a couple of weeks in temple with the monks and following exactly what they did. And a very significant shift took place for me during that period of time. And also the experience of closing my eyes and an hour and 20 minutes later opening that felt like it was a split second. It just happened so quickly. And so there is just some real harmony that started to take place. I also started to recognize that I've never felt that I was a bad person, but I think there's lots of people out there that may think they're bad people, and they try to be people pleasers, and instead of allowing themselves to say, hey, I'm a good person, and get that self-love that you've talked about. Because at the end of the day, from a simplistic standpoint, the only people that, if you truly believe that you're a good person, the other person on the other side of the mirror is the only one you really have to make sure believes you. If you do something that's inappropriate and you've truly apologized, whether someone else wishes to accept it or not is irrelevant. You've done that yourself. You've given yourself that gift to allow yourself to go, I made a mistake. I'm not going to do it again. I love that person. I love myself. Let's move on. And And again, as I say, the way you build on this, Geraldine, I could sit here and talk to you for hours. As I said earlier, you're an encyclopedia, and I so appreciate the way that you're trying to compact this in for us to get a little bit of a feel for it. Um,
Mhm.
One of the things that I've read about you, and you talked about that there are like 4 million Americans, if not more. These are the ones that have probably stepped forward that have actually claimed that they've been in one form or another of their abductees. 4 million people. And 15% of those suggest that they've been involved in hybridization that we've touched on,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And the one that I found fascinating is the 31% understand why it's happening. And you went through that, and really what I'm hearing is it's to allow growth for humans, but also for interdimensional beings, which we are part of. It's just that natural progression that, for whatever reason, isn't really talked about or hadn't been talked about, and it's really becoming something that's in the forefront. And people are starting to understand that there's more to life. They're starting to trust themselves a little bit more, and that energy, that positive energy, is starting to raise the awareness of Mother Earth. Like we're we're changing in a very significant way. Um, Tell me, how can people connect with you? Obviously, you have such a gift. You've helped so many people that are going through some challenges in life. Geraldine, what's the best way people can connect with you and maybe get sessions with you, but just find out more of what you're doing?
Yes, well, I have a YouTube channel, Geraldine Orozco, which you can check out. And I have a lot of free content there. I do a lot of 30-day meditation challenges, which gets into, really in mastery of the emotional body. I also have a 30-day alchemy challenge, alchemical transmutation. I talk a lot about working with primordial life force with our sex energy too, because
Mm,
when we are not aware of what we're doing with our sexual energy, we actually contract a lot of parasites, right? We become parasites, for one thing. We always looking outside for that love, for that connection, but we also are interacting with a lot of parasitic consciousness. And there is a large element, we haven't gone to that in this conversation about the hybridization program, but there is a large parasitic aspect to it as well that we do need to be aware of. And so beginning to understand what your sexual energy is for, this is information that's been kind of suppressed for a long time. But the mastery over our most powerful primordial life force is really important. And it's something that I think will come in more in the next few years. So I do teach a lot about that. You can visit me at geraldineorozco.com. I am a clinical hypnotherapist and I do epigenetic psychotherapy. And also, if you're an experiencer, you can join my support group at hybridmother.com, and that's free. So you're welcome to join that. It's international over Zoom. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to be here.
thank you for taking the time to be with us. And I look forward to having the opportunity to get on some of your programs that you have and enjoy that conversation and take it to the next step. But Geraldine, thank you so much for taking the
Thank
time with us today.
you so much. Much love.